Figure it out, Curtis. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is Coach Carter with Unity in the Community. You know, our goal here is how to maintain healthy relationships. Our topic today is it take the hood to save the hood. So, as we know, in the city of Oakland, we have a lot of increase in violence. We have a lot of homicides that's been going on, and we have a lot of organizations that's on the ground doing the work. Oftentimes, people don't really know who these organizations are. Even if you pass by a building and see the name of it, you really don't have a connection with that person. So, in order for us to bridge the gap between the city officials, faith based organizations, and community leaders, and those who are funded to do this work, this for the month of June, I am bringing in community leaders that work in the capacity of violence interruption, community outreach, resource centers that bring awareness to a lot of things that's going on in our community. So we want to acknowledge that we are on Believe Radio. This is a 24-hour gospel radio station. And as y'all know, I'm Coach Carter, and my style is really just to interact with my guests, and we have these it's just a conversation, and y'all just privileged to be in the room as we go live. So I'll be asking him questions. We'll do some dialogue so you guys could get an understanding. Today, we will add some more tools to your toolbox. So that's the purpose of this show. Today, I have Mr. Jones on here today. So he works for Boss, which is an organization on 90th and MacArthur. They also have a location in Oakland. So I won't sell him short. I'm allow him to introduce himself. He's well known in the community. He's from this community. He have made a big impact in the work that we do. So I'm gonna have him to introduce himself, and then we're gonna go from there.
Okay, thank you, Coach Carter. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is John Jones III. So I'm on staff with Boss, building opportunities for self-sufficiency. So my title is Director of Reentry and Violence Prevention Programs. So basically, that's two programs. One focuses on reentry. So as people are returning home, we help them assist them with trying to get jobs, a place to stay, things of that nature, and job training. And then with the violence prevention programs, we're working with folks like yourself, Department of Violence Prevention, really focus on interrupting these retaliatory cycles of violence while also being in a position to help people in our community with the services that we provide as an organization.
Okay, that's good. So how did you become involved in this type of work?
I would say two things, really. Honestly, was born into it,
Mhm.
right? Just being born and raised in East Oakland, the things that we experienced was sadly normal for us. That includes incarceration and violence. The second part was desperation. So after I did my last prison stint, I was released in 2012, but I couldn't find a job or a place to stay because I had a record. So here I am with two strikes. I'm like, okay, do I go back to the block and then I run the risk of going to prison for the rest of my life for my third strike, or should I be involved in organizing? And that's the path I took. Just being involved with the things that I was first experiencing and then seeing what the community was experiencing.
Okay, so what are some of the problems you face in your work?
Ooh, right. I don't think we have
We
a long
got
enough
30
show.
minutes to an hour, so
Right.
come on.
I'll make it quick. I think for me, here's the challenge. The first is I'm gonna look at it in two ways. I'm gonna call it proximity, and this is what I mean. So folks like you, myself, we're on the ground in real time. We're responding to the needs of people in real time. There's a lot of people in Oakland, whether they're elected officials or even part of other organizations. They're receiving funding, but to be honest, they're not really doing the work. And part of the reason why that's a challenge because a lot of these organizations don't hire from the community, right? So if you get someone not born from Oakland, and all of a sudden they're hearing about Oakland and they're supposed to go do outreach, we're not seeing that happening.
Mhm.
So I always tell people it's not a matter of whether or not resources exist. It's a matter of do you have the network to reach the people who really need to know about it? Are you actually on the ground? Are you visible? So that's the first piece, proximity, just being aware. This other challenge, I call it just hopelessness. There is a real feeling that people just don't have hope, whether it's for their life, for the future. They don't know how they're going to get through the day. And we're seeing this, right? Like if you don't have hope for yourself, then you don't have value for yourself. And if you're not valuing yourself, then you don't have value for someone else. So when we see that really with violence. So for me, it's when I say hopelessness, that's really a mental health issue And I think we got to do a better job of discussing the impact of mental health, or should we say mental well-being.
Hmm. Hmm. So speak to that mental well-being, because I find out that's a lot of excuses when it comes to this work. The first thing that somebody say they got a mental health issue and all that. But growing up, we all had somebody, an uncle, somebody that stayed in a room that they kind of like hid, because he had those type of mental health issues. But it was always that one kid or that one person that could go in there and talk to him, wake him up, and he was just the same as everybody else. So I think it's an excuse a lot of times when we do say mental health, because I have experienced friends having children with mental health issues, and there's so many bare minimum of resources. The first thing they do is 5150 them. They stay in the hospital 24 hours to 72 hours. Then they going back home to that same environment with no tools and no resources. So when we talk about mental health issues in this work, how do you think us as violence interrupters, how could we really help families navigate through those systems? Because going to the hospital and all that, then when they come home, they still experiencing the same things. And what kind of tools do you think or what kind of resources do you feel we need to expand that level of work?
Oh, that piece you just named. I mean, it's so real, it's needed. Let's start with this. So there's a couple of parts of this, right? So we start with resources. I mean, if we really break down what a violence interrupter is, we take on way more than we really supposed to. Because again, we know the needs are there. So for me, I always encourage my team to really focus on what the task is, because it's overwhelming. Because we're out here and we can't be everything to everybody, sadly. But we do need something in place to help people navigate these systems, because that's the first challenge. So we said 5150, John George, the institutionalized piece of it, or even in Santa Rita, where they spent what $54 million talking they're going to provide mental health services inside the jail. But then when you're released, you don't have access to the same amount of resources. And even going back to the 80s when President Reagan divested from mental health, right? And so I'm gonna add a few more things because it's so important. I'm gonna start with I share this often. If we look at 2020, right? So we had the pandemic. So that generated fear on a global level. People was freaking out. I'm gonna die. Don't call for me. Stay in the house, right? People was losing their minds, right? I'm talking about families were being broken up. If you're not vaccinated, you can't come to my house. Like I experienced this in my own family, right? And then you couple that with the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. So now we see anger generating on a global level. So we got these two twin emotional debilitating factors that was really crippling people mentally. And then you look at just across the board, it's a privilege to be able to have a job, right? People were sheltering in place with their abusers. So we're talking about trauma. Some of it is multi-generational. Some of it is, a person's own personal experiences. So one of the things I find useful is training on trauma, right? So, like when we want to scene, not personalize it, because this person responded from a place of trauma that could potentially be triggered from another event, not just while we're there. So just being mindful in real time that we are really full human beings. And I think the greatest challenge is, especially in the Black community, like we say things like trauma, we're really like, that's for white people. But I would share this, like if your tooth hurt, there's no shame to go to the dentist, right? If my knee hurt, I can go to the doctor. So why I can't check on my mental or my emotional or my spiritual well-being too? Doesn't mean anything wrong with you, just mean we're human. But we're forced to, they say things like resilient, right? Oh, you from Oakland, you from East Oakland, you gotta be resilient and make it out the hood. I think we sell ourselves short with that mentality, because no one should be expected to overcome the things that we're seeing in our community. That's not normal. It's normal to us until you start traveling. Like, wait a minute, hold on. You got people sleeping on the streets, and just the things I see in Oakland. When I go to other cities, I don't see it.
And I just went to Memphis to visit my son. I did not see one homeless person. And as high as crime is and everything they say about that, I did not see one homeless person. But to piggyback on what you said, I believe everything you said is true. And that should be part of the violence interrupters training, because that trauma informed care. And then another thing is the language. So a lot of times when I came into this work, they used a lot of words that was over my head. I had to break it down and be like, okay, check this out. What that mean? So you mean I'm dysfunctional? So I mean, you know what I'm saying? I'm functioning this function based on the things that I've been experienced and been exposed to. So now I could go back to my community and say, based on the things you've experienced and been exposed to, this is kind of like a reaction instead of saying trauma informed care and using all these big words. So that's a lot of times why people don't take advantage of resources because we talk over their head, then I don't feel there's a lot of accountability. If we goes back to what you said in the beginning, people look good on paper, so you qualify for the grant money because you know how to, look good on paper. When the actual people on the ground doing the work, you don't even reach out to them to employ them once you get these grants, and then you have to start manipulating the system to meet those requirements. So those are a lot of things that I see in this work. So that's why I wanted you to be my first guest, because every time we ever been in the same room, me and you kind of had that same mentality. Get the work done. Let the people who figuring out the money, they figure out the money. But if we on the ground, then we need to figure out how we gonna get to the people what they need. So that has always been something I admired about you, because that's always been your goal. Is okay, y'all figure that out. Where we need to be, what we supposed to be doing. And now, like you said, they have so much money now to where they just giving money to people who really stepping on each other's toes in the work. So a lot of times I just take a back seat to a lot of things that's going on because the information won't come to me regardless. So just how do you manage that, with working with a new team coming, because for a while, Youth Alive was the only organization that had violence interrupters. And it's a formula to how we do the work. We went through the training. We went to conference. We did all kind of stuff. But now you got the money. You just hiring people. So now the way we navigate the scenes, and sometimes with me, I work with homicide families. So sometimes the way I navigate the scene, people be looking at me like, is she working with the police? Is she on the staff? Is she a chaplain? Because I'm from this community. So normally when I pull up, people be like, oh, there go Nina. So now that give me, the family recognize me. So that means I can go speak to the police on your behalf. I don't work with the police, but I'm like, okay, y'all good. They treat y'all right. Okay, now let me see what's going on. Now I could come back and say, okay, well, they saying the coroners will be here within the next 45 minutes. So now I'm giving them information to calm the family down. So then the other violence interrupters looking at me like, okay, well, who is he and where he come from? Because we sit in the rooms together and do this so-called training, but we never establish a relationship with each other. So speak to that piece, how you train and navigate your staff when you got to send them out to a call.
I think what you said, that the first step and key is training. Mm-hmm. It's not just being out there, just being wild. It's understanding protocols and process, right? And that's something I drill into my team every single day, every single week. We have a formula. We build upon the experience of folks like you and Kevin and Trail and Sean has been doing the work. So no matter who we think we are, right? I always say this: we're not Michael Jackson and Jackson 5. Everybody's Tito. Because we got to get the ego out the way. Because I'm telling you, it happens when you go like, oh, well, I don't like this person's style, and I think this organization not doing it right. Don't worry about that. I'm worried about the people in our community, and I don't care if it's us or somebody else. As long as someone is helping them, right?
Yes.
And that goes to two more things: relationships. That's important. So I know Daryl's going to talk about this. So when we say things like credible messenger, that's who you are, right? Someone who's credible. That means someone that's known in the community. And people know you, you know people, right? So it makes the job easier, to be honest. I've been in situations where I don't even have to be on the scene. I'm not similar to you, but people be calling. Or I can make a few calls because we're trusted. They know we're not the police, for one. And they just know that we're really about the mission, the work, right? Because the last piece is it's about time. You got to put time into anything. You can't jump out there 1 week in the game talking about, yeah, I'm a violence interrupter. Like, no, slow down. Like, you got to get to a place where people can really trust you. Because I said it's like for me, when I started out, coming from the streets and then doing this work, my partner's like, man, some square stuff, like some politicians, these white folks, like, what are you doing? They didn't get the movement. So I understood that. But when you're consistent, then after a while, people start respecting it, right? So I think the same thing is true for the work that we do. It's just being consistent, it's being humble, and it's working as a team. And then the trainings. The trainings are always important because there's things that we might not be able to see, So to me, I appreciate it all.
And for me, even I'm the type that when I come to a scene, I like to know who's on the scene, where you from, let's exchange numbers. So then I tell them, okay, I know the detective on the scene, so let me get some information because I like the scene. I don't like a lot of drama. I don't like a lot going on. So oftentimes I try to do that engagement So y'all, I ain't here to step on y'all toes, and don't step on mine, but let me get what I can, and then we navigate. And then I appoint somebody, so now you report back, because I'm finna deal with the family on the homicide or whatever. So that's how I go to the scene. So a lot of times I don't get that pushback, but sometimes you got them guys who like, she a female, how she finna come navigate that scene, and then I laugh because I'm like, I don't even want to be here. You know what I'm saying? That's why I'm trying to get your number so I could dispatch you to be there because there's so much other stuff to this work. Because we all know when we do meet a family or we do a bedside visit, and once you get with that person, we are limited on the resources. We can relocate you, we can get you up out of here, but have we navigated for you to survive in that city or where we sent you to? Who's finding out the resources in those cities? So my job go beyond that. So that's why I'm saying being at the scene is the bare minimum. When it's time for him to be released, he just got shot at his house on that block. We can't send him back to the house. So those are the other resources that's outside. That's why I always ask, what's your vision for your organization? So people think I'm crazy. Let's go beyond that scope. Because a lot of these cats, we can't say, well, Amazon hiring. Because you go to an orientation at Amazon, you see 4, 5 of your,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying, from
Mm-hmm.
another team. Because somebody from another organization done told them, and what we got a shootout in the parking lot,
Mm-hmm.
or you at McDonald's or Target. So we never really do the balance part. What is this person capable of doing once they come outside the hospital? Is he an entrepreneur? Can we get him into some entrepreneur courses? Oh, he already have a business. How can we help him support that business? So why do we never look beyond the bare minimum of the resources that's available?
That's a good point. In fact, that's one of the things I learned. So I used to work for Youth Alive in 2014
Mm-hmm.
as an intervention specialist. So doing bedside visits for young people between 16 and 24. And then to your point, I learned quickly, like, there were so many needs
Mm-hmm.
that the folks we work with have, and we don't always have the resources. So for me, I began to like put like a little, you can call it like a manual, but really it's about network. When they say you
Mm-hmm.
network for your network, so start being in a position to meet people who do different things, whether it's different jobs. Because sometimes it's a matter of the location, not the job. If they got shot over here, they don't want to go to that area.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they got beef, sometimes they're not going to tell us.
Mm-hmm.
So being in a position to where, okay, well, I know some folks in the trades, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to get into the electrician trade, make good money, it's out the way in San Leandro. You're going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And actually going with them, not just sending
Certainly.
folks, actually going with them. And sometimes sitting down and having a meal, man, let's just have a real conversation. Because I make it clear, like, and in a lot of ways, I work for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just here to help. I ain't here to force nothing on you. I am not your parole officer. I'm not your daddy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just someone here trying to help you. You get to pick and choose what it is you want to do. And my job is to help you get there. So that way it's more buy-in from them. Because I think a lot of times folks are always told what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's not that where we're saying is wrong, but if that's not what you want to do, why do that? So I believe that's also got to be in a violence interrupters too, though.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, there's so many things that we're seeing happening with people. And if you feel like you don't have the resources, then you can take it home with you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one thing I don't want my team to do. Because I know it's easy to say, but I mean, I always tell people, we work with people. If you can't deal with people, go sell refrigerators.
Yes, yes, yes,
Right?
yes. That's
So
it.
it's tough.
So that's good because working with people and like you were saying, the trade schools. Where is the funding for that? Where's everybody got the same services. So that'd be kind of like my thing, and that's why I started my organization in Antioch because I'm like I refuse to tell people to go get a job. You know what I'm saying? I just refuse. We learned during the pandemic. School wasn't important, neither was your employment. Because during that time, a lot of people lost their jobs, and these kids was lost going from those personal contacts, what school was invented for us to learn conflict mediation, learn how to have relations. Everything that kids went to school for was taken from them for 2 years. And then you got the kids who learned how to be criminals from dealing with bigger cousins or other family members during that time because somebody had to be that set person. So a lot of kids mingled with other family members that they weren't familiar with and they got pulled in gangs. So I want to talk, what ways do you think to get young people involved, because we deal with a lot of older people, and the organization who do target young people is not the young people that we see. They always get the good ones that's
Yeah.
going to graduate from school, or they could speak at the, the city council meetings and all of that. But the ones who done lost two, three family members and still going to school trying to focus, are the ones who don't got a ride from football practice. It's still kids out there like that that's going to school hungry. So how do you think we could get more youth focused than dealing with these grown folks that don't want the resources? I'm ready to just transition from dealing with them altogether and just start focusing on these kids.
No, that's real. They got a saying, I how it go, but basically they say it's easier to work with young people than it is damaged men. Because people get to a certain age and point in life where they're gonna do what they want to do. And you just be talking to you blue in the face. The question around how do we engage more young people? I think a couple of things is needed. The first thing is to stop talking at them. So when I engage people, I listen, right? Because they know what's going on with them. Because I think what happened myself. I remember when I was young and then the old heads be saying things, I say, I'm not getting old, I'm never gonna be that way. And I find myself doing it every now and then, especially as a father, it's 20. So I had to like dial it, let him be. But here's the point, really listening. Because young people are actually smart too. So especially if you for a paycheck, right? So we're talking at them, then we get frustrated. No. And they need their own leadership because we come from a different generation era. So I don't pretend to know everything. There's things I can relate to, but a lot of it I can't. And I'm honest about that. That's why I say let's dialogue. I'm here to learn from you. Me some game that I wear that with my own sons, right? I really think it starts there. It's a respect thing. The second thing is everybody want to shine. So that's the challenge. So to your point about jobs, like why I'll tell people I can never tell somebody to stop hustling, and the only thing I can offer is a minimum wage job. Right. That don't even make sense. Then we come off as, oh, see, you square, you don't get it. So I understand people want to, and I also understand everyone won't have that. Got to be real. Everyone can't ball out. So I really focus on is agency. That is, how do we empower people to recognize? See, one of the things I get frustrated in active, we do. And to your point, we use language that don't make sense. White supremacy. Right. We in our community bringing in dope and guns. What's doing it? Social media is notorious for it. How many times I see grown individuals complaining, "Oh, well, my parents there old now." How old are you now? We really got to focus on what we can do. There's always going to be some kind of drama. Always. Like we didn't see this COVID come in a shutdown. Never will come in. So we got to get to a place, no matter what it is. Like I say, when life throws lemons at you, don't make lemonade, make lemon meringue. Oh, okay. You know what I'm saying? Sounds good. Yeah. So push, because you always got to be your own best advocate. So people, you got to be your own cheerleader. Your number one cheerleader. If you don't rock you, else to. And don't go off other people say. Really focus on you. Because here's the catch, and this was interesting. It's the herd mentality. So if you the people and everyone in the world to be honest or real, you know what I mean? Because they weren't. I definitely see this in prison. The hardest dudes, you get in a 2-man cell after 6 months to a year, when they start opening up, talking about they was poor. My daddy said, go take me Christmas shopping. He never showed up. And finding out things about people. My point is that type of real interaction is needed. We got to really just we're doing this thing and it's a photo op, but connecting with them and really seeing. Need to see. I got an example. So the office on 95th Max. So there's a liquor store next door. So it was some students from Castlemont. They got into it with some other girls. It's a group of women. So I'm in there and they in there. I ain't gonna lie. They acting a donkey in the store. They just going off. They like F your dad, this, that, and the other. They being verbally abusive toward the store clerk. So I'm just waiting there patiently. I'm not even tripping. I'm like, and I'm trying my best and not have a look on my face like, yo, acting ratchet. I don't want to contribute to judging nobody, right? So one of the sisters finally looked and she seen me and she seen my demeanor, how I was just cool and calm. She's like, I hope these store clerk don't be rude with you. And I didn't even say anything, but I knew for me, my takeaway was she recognized that I wasn't judging her. And that was her way of keeping back to me, that type of respect. If that makes sense.
Mhm.
So I really think it's really just paying attention, just being present and being there for them, and not over promising. Same as if I was in a rush. Some things I can't do. I'm not gonna make you no promises, but I'm gonna holler at you and see what I can do. What is it you want to do, and try to make those connections.
And I think that's good. That's always my thing because I don't take a lot of engagement because my testimony of what I've been through ain't relevant for this generation. And I have a problem when people always want to bring the young people to the table and they telling them about how disrespectful they are and how when we grew up we had the village and we had this and we had that and y'all shouldn't be acting like this because not even considering that these ain't the same times. And that's what I have a real problem with when a lot of these OGs, nigga, I used to sell dope and I used to, well, we just trying to survive. We live in survival mode, so we not selling dope because that we don't hustle like that.
Exactly.
We trying to live, so we gonna rob somebody, take something, to get something to eat, or a hotel room to sleep. So the mentality is totally different. And just like when we grew up, the game was handed down. You was groomed for your next level. You know what I'm saying? People picked you out from the street. Oh, me for one, she angry. She tried like, okay, she finna hang the cats. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I was groomed for the streets. So I didn't just come in it and just start doing. They groomed me based on my personality. So you could see some kids and be like, especially these kids now, they just in survival mode. So for me to sit them down and tell them, that's like bragging rights to me, because a lot of these kids have been in these resource, whatever, foster homes that they done ran away from because they're not treating them right. So then they're home for real, in real time, sleeping in cars. And then the first thing we say is, respect me. So could you speak to
Absolutely. You know what? And it's funny, right? We're talking about, so, I remember having a conversation with somebody. They was talking about, man, I'm so sick and tired of these youngsters sagging. I said, man, let's talk about that for a minute.
mm-hmm.
I'm worried about whether or not this youngster's going to live.
Mm-hmm.
I'm worried about them not being killed or choked out by the police or being in poverty. Is them if he pulled his pants up, would that guarantee him a job at Google or Apple? Like, let's have a real conversation. To your point, like we people talk about respect is something you give. You follow
Yes.
me? And young people deserve that. In fact, if you break that word, respect really means to see and
Mm-hmm.
see again. So if we're really seeing these young people, then we will understand that they're dealing with something larger. I really feel sorry for them.
Man.
Like, man, we came up in the 80s. I joked about this. I remember a comedian said this. Like, back in the day, you can do something stupid, OG will pop out the bushes. Don't do that, youngster. That gets you 5 to 10.
Yes.
So you're right. The young people, they don't have that same. They started incorporating the leadership, locking up folks who really passed the game down. And here's the other. See, we did social media. Oh my, social media is the devil. I mean, it can be used for good things. Be wrong, but here's a perfect example. So when people say stuff like, "Oh man, you're soft nowadays," I said, you got to remember something. When I went to Castle and you bullied me, and you and whoever, have to put that on social media. Right. So now, if I had a problem at Castle, my mama could pull me out and say, okay, so I'm going to put you in Fremont or Skyline. You can't out of Castlemont today in the James Logan because they got social media there too. And then we're starting seeing an increase of young people committing suicide. I really think we got to stop judging. And I think that's really it's about more about us than ever. That makes sense. Like we want to feel like, even when my saying it's like the Mount Westmore concert, the rap concert, he went there talking, oh yeah, see, this is what it's about. OG's having a good time. I said, cuz you forgot, man, in 89, they killed somebody at the end of the right. Like we wasn't doing anything better than this young generation. In fact, it's our fault.
Yes.
They looked up to us.
Yes.
We the bigger brothers and uncles and even fathers. So these kids was watching us, getting off the porch, doing the nonsense we were doing, and that's why it's our job to come back and give, because we got to correct that piece. We set a poor example. I own that.
And that's what I say. I tell people all the time, we owe what we know, and going back to that. When they talk about these young people, I was that young person. So that's the first thing I say. I know what it's like to have rejection and abandonment issues life. So it's a mentality that comes from within the house. So we never want to talk about the seeds that parents sow. You know what I'm saying? Because we get our life together and now we doing good, but then our residue is still there with these kids. So we forget when you calling your daughter names, you grooming her for prostitution. So when a dude call her the same name or slap upside her head, you a man slapping your daughter in the face. What kind of that's you grooming her for that. When females calling their daughters out their name and you could get out my house. When you tell them to get out their house, you ain't gave them no tools to survive. So what you think? Now they're a victim. So somebody gonna slide up under them and make them mind their business because you didn't create them for that. So the stuff that we say as parents, I think a lot, and they can't say, well, we ain't responsible for what you are. You can never say you're not responsible because when your child start displaying behavior that you know you had, that's when you sit them down and tell them your story. You don't kick them out because it reminds you of your story. See, in that way, they'll get a better understanding and then they'll make better choices. But we can't be, and I tell a lot of moms, how you mad at her? Talking about she 18, she lazy, she don't do nothing. Every day she comes home from school, you in the bed, in pajamas, telling her what to do, but she don't see you. So how you gonna downplay her when in the back of her head she said you ain't doing that either? So those type of things that I really try to talk about in my women's group because we feel like because we not achieved there. But during frustrating times of when you feel you're not in a good relationship and life happens for you, then those same things come up and the kids see that. It ain't going nowhere. You just done put some icing on top of the cake.
Mm-hmm.
So could we speak to that?
Yeah, really, and so I have three sons. I'm a single father of my oldest son who just turned 20, and then my youngest son is 7. And the first thing I realized quickly, as you hear this, me, your kid, do what I say, not what I do.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't what we say to our kids, it's what we do. So I've learned it's very important for us to not be a hypocrite. If I'm telling my kids not to do certain things, there's certain things I won't watch or certain things I won't listen to because I'm hearing it and it's cool. But I'm telling him not to do it.
Right, right.
It's really say what you mean what you say. If you're going to do something, do it. Don't be threatening people because it's a form of abuse. I'm going to promise to take my kids somewhere and then I fake on that. I have to be impeccable with my word. I say I'm going to take you to the movies on Tuesday, $5 movies on Tuesdays. Now let me know we're going. If I'm tired, no matter what kind of I have, we honor that because we're teaching our kids about the world and we're also teaching them how to show up in the world. To also or real they word. That's the first step. That's all you got today is your word.
Like I'm glad you said that. My next guest is he out there looking at my phone. Y'all who think I was but the book my, it was for really good. So they wouldn't have to experience certain things. So it's called freedom. How so phone when tell them I ain't here.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying how I you see yourself, your husband don't have to know that table. So it's